Welcome to episode number 8 of Shockwaves.
The deep end of horror.
The
gonna
deep
jump on you.
end
I'm gonna
of
jump on
horror?
that one.
Way
Make
to
sure you
go,
didn't have to do
Elric,
it.
jumping right in. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Galluzzo, and with me is Elric Kane.
Who is back from his
didn't go
trek
anywhere.
across
I
the
don't know what you're
U.S.?
What were you doing?
Where were you? You were all over
The only
the place.
that anyone listening will care where I went was Texarkana, the town that dreaded sundown.
That's right.
Nice.
I was very excited because I once got a trivia question wrong at Horror Trivia about this, where the question was, is it Arkansas or is it Texas? And I was like, well, it could be Texas. It's both, but it is actually Arkansas.
It's
really.
Arkansas. I asked that question.
But it was an interesting town. And the funny thing, because these are based on true stories, right? You feel the town's kind of quiet now. It feels like a lot of shuttered buildings. Feels like kind of a dead town. And I know one of our listeners, I think it's William Mahaffey. Somebody lives there. Somebody wrote to me as soon as they saw that picture, and they said, "Yeah, I'm here." And I was like, "Oh wow!" In Texarkana. So sorry if I got the person wrong, but I don't know. It's interesting. There's no mention of the movie anywhere. There's no mention of any of the it's very. I went into a lot of antique stores and op shops, thinking, "Oh, maybe I'll find some cool, weird little." Nothing. I mean, it's not even what the word Texarkana.
You didn't find a vintage trombone or anything?
I didn't see a trombone. So that was kind of interesting.
I thought they screened it every year. Maybe
they probably did. Well,
maybe the remake killed all that.
Was the remake shot there? That was one thing I was trying to think. I figured
it
it must have been.
I thought.
It's a cool, very cinematic looking town, but again, that's at the detriment of the town. It's very quiet. And, but yeah, I got to go to Dallas and see where JFK shot. I was just it was a fun trip getting to see a lot of. I'm trying to think if there are any other horror sites. I didn't. The crazy part is. Since we've been doing shows like Killer POV, everything we've done, I've never gone a period 3 weeks without watching a movie. I went almost 3 weeks.
Wow.
And for me in my life, I can't remember doing that. So I was just traveling across America. It was really cool. And then on the last day of my trip, I'm in Dallas, Austin, last day, and I was like, I want to go see The Shallows. So that was the first movie I saw in theaters. I went by myself late at night, and I got to see The Shallows. So that's the one movie I saw first.
Well, you could talk about it, but last but not least, we didn't introduce Rebekah.
Oh, yeah. Hey, guys. I'm here,
hey,
too.
There you go.
I didn't go anywhere.
That's what happens. Once Elric starts,
he
doesn't shut up.
Yeah.
It's like the Tasmanian devil. He just will not stop.
Blake Lively's ass was on my mind.
Yeah, of course.
It was getting in the way of you, Bekah. I couldn't see past
I know.
Blake
You
Lively.
look at me and you just see Blake Lively's ass.
Sorry,
Why?
her Oakland booty, as she called it, even though it's
I don't
totally
understand
ridiculous.
this ass talk.
Yeah, I know. Well, you will if you see The Shallows, because there's not much else to talk
It's
about.
there the whole time.
All right. Well, did you like it?
Liked, yeah. Escape is fun. You know what? It's one of those movies. I think some people are really excited by it. As a shark thriller part, there's some really fun stuff. And he's a good director. He made Orphanage.
Yeah.
And
Orphan.
Orphan,
Big
which is
difference.
a much better.
Big
I liked him more. He did Taken. Is that right? One of the Taken
No,
movies?
not Taken. He did the other two, Unknown and
okay, which are both okay.
Nonstop.
Yeah.
Train
Nonstop.
one?
Yeah. That's
Whatever
the plain
they're
one.
called.
Unknown's okay. This is fun. I don't like some of the setup of the styles, a little too much. Blake Lively's really good, and you like watching her, and you kind of care. I actually gave a shit. The shark stuff's actually pretty scary. There's about 2 or 3 moments there where, unlike Jaws sequels, where you don't really get scared anymore. There's a couple actual scary beats. But it really kind of goes to a really ridiculous place, in my opinion, kind of worse than, say, Jaws 4 or something. But some people are really loving it, and I think that's cool. And it's a fun summer movie to see on the screen. So I definitely recommend it on that level. Should you go see it as escaping? Yes. But I'm not. It's not for me so much. But that's The Shallows. But Blake Lively, great to watch.
Nice. What else did you see?
Well, there's a lot. Well, of the new films, I got back. I've been back in town a couple of days, so I hadn't seen Neon Demon.
Everyone's asking.
And a lot of people, I've read multiple write-ups of Graham Skipper and other good friends saying this will be Elric's favorite movie of the year.
Oh.
Bekah, who never pegs me correctly, pegged me straight away when I walked in here when she realized that it wasn't going to be one of Elric's favorite movies.
Nope.
And I'm going to be disappointing listeners who want me to champion the art house horror. But the cool thing is, Nicholas Refn's remake of Showgirls is actually kind of fun.
Wow.
Take the fun part out of Showgirls and make it keep the trashy elements and then add an even artier element, but make it completely vapid. And that I would say is kind of where
that's
the end.
it?
But stylistically, there's a lot to like. It's really fun to watch it. We were watching the movie, and the one thing that is like this is still really fun to see in a theater and not know where the movie's going. Like I have no idea where that story's going while I'm watching it, right up until the end, to be honest. Which is a great experience and a movie made that artistically feels great to see in cinemas. But the just complete lack of caring about character, even though it's part of the point of the movie. It just didn't have any heart for me, and it was hard for me to feel like under the skin, a movie where I felt a lot and understood where it was going and had the same kind of artistry. This one was lacking. There's things about it, though. Jenna Malone is always been a great actress, I think, and in this, she has a great role, and Keanu Reeves is killer in his little cameo. He's like so fun. But the one thing in this isn't spoiler free, but I will say is like, me and my friend Webb, who's behind me right now,
sitting on the
couch, we've been talking about writing a lot, and we talked about that if the best scene in your movie, because it's very tempting as a writer, it's like I'll have a surreal idea for a scene, and I'll be like, oh, I want to put that in a movie, and it's a dream. If the best scene in your movie, or the one that kind of hooks you the most, is a dream, like a lot of movies have this problem, and this one has one dream scene, which isn't ruining anything because the whole movie feels like a dream, but it has a dream scene that is the moment I think I was hooked into the movie. And then the person wakes up and you go, oh, and it's being let out of that bubble, I think, that actually can ruin a movie. Mm-hmm. And that has that for me. My favorite scene in it ended up being a dream. So, the one thing I'll say, man, it's seeing necrophilia. I tweeted this, but I really mean it. Seeing a hardcore necrophilia scene. I mean hardcore necrophilia scene on a big screen in a mainstream movie theater, surrounded by people who have no idea that's what they're going to see. Like, people are just going, hey, let's go see a movie at 12 o'clock in the day, is fucking subversive as shit, and it felt kind of exciting. Like, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. So it has a lot of these great things. So this is the kind of movie where I see it and I go, oh, I totally get why some people are going to fucking love this. Like, I really do. It's just for me personally, there wasn't that thing that, I think it's just the emotional story wasn't there for me to pull through. I didn't care. I was like, I got to the end and go empty for me, and so it's exciting in a way to see something so art house Euro trash is getting into major theaters, and people are like on Letterboxd, on Rotten Tomatoes, this has like a 50% rating.
Yeah.
Letterboxd, which is Cinephiles, it is getting like 4.5 stars. Everyone fucking loves it. They are seeing that thing that I think listeners probably were thinking I was going to see, and I just didn't for me. So there's that. I'd love to hear what everyone, our listeners think, but it's fun trash. I mean, if you're going to see like high-end trash, like beautiful trash, this is the trash to see.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard that it is absolutely amazing to look at, and then
Really?
there isn't much substance behind it, but I've heard that from a number of people.
Well, and it's also the point because it's about models and it's about vapidity, but at a certain point you're like, yeah, but who cares? Like, I get it. And like your credits, I got it. Like, do I need that? So, but it looks great. There's a box set movie that, this is going back like before I left. So, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times.
Oh, I gotta get that.
Yeah, and the box.
I have the DVD one. Did I lend you?
You lent it to me, and I gave it back because I found out the Blues were
Blu-ray
coming.
came out, yeah.
Because the one I want to see is night Evelyn came out of her graves, and
It's boring.
Well, that's what. Unfortunately, I'd say the same about Red. Some people are online saying Dick bought it because so many people were like saying it is so freaking good, and it does look great. These are a beautiful release, this box set. But man, I found the pacing of it was pretty brutal. This is me. I'm now the guy. Yeah. Suddenly tonight is not my art house night. I don't know I came back as a pod person. Hey, but that shallow Blake Lively's great. But it is interesting. It's pretty straight giallo. The one cool thing though, Rob, is lots of Sybil Danning nudity.
Ooh.
And she is hot in it. It's really cool. So these are, his name's Emilio Miraglia. And they're good, but it's just one of those ones that's, again, it's like kind of creaky and slow, and the couple of beautiful, really amazing moments are long to get to, So I haven't seen Night the Evelyn. We're going to watch that too, so we want to finish the box.
It's the same way. It's very creaky and very slow, and the few moments that you're like, oh, that was kind of scary. Oh, no. It's like it just fizzles.
Okay, I'll definitely give it a shot because they are beautiful to look at. So I would still recommend getting them. But it is interesting, some of these like really expensive boxes. I've been underwhelmed by some of these movies that are costing $60 for you to hunt down, and luckily I wasn't paying. All right, sorry, Dick. But yeah, so there's some of the kind of the newer things. I had never seen Romero Season of the Witch. Did you get to that in the end, Rob?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay. I thought you might. See, I'd never seen it. And Webb, who's also in the room, brought the DVD copy, and I thought for a second that you might have hit the movie theater to see it. And it's just, I wouldn't say recommend it as a horror film to someone,
not a horror
but as a film, is really smart, really interesting, stylistic. You really see a lot of Romero's concerns and the things he's always been very progressive about his ideas. And I thought it was a pretty exciting piece of filmmaking.
Yeah.
You know?
It's always, and it's weird to say that that's one of my favorite Romero movies. But I just always enjoyed it. And not even so much as a horror film. It's just a really good film, as you said. And it does have the same kind of ambiguity that's posed in Martin, where you're like, is he a vampire or isn't he a vampire? You get the same thing. Like, is she a witch or isn't she a witch? And it really doesn't matter at the end of it. So
I think it's a fun, completist witch movie. And for Romero fans, it's not a disappointment as a movie at all. So that's, a good one. Don't know how hard it is to find that.
It's not that hard, actually. The Blu-ray or the DVD is, I don't think it's very expensive.
I think it's out of print. Anchor Bay put it out a long time ago.
It's a double on there. It's got another movie on there, something Vanilla.
There's
or
always
something.
Vanilla,
which
is one of his very, very rare movies.
The comedy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how easy it is to get these days.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that expensive.
I mean, I left the day after we were at John Carpenter Live. I left the next day.
Oh, yeah.
So we didn't even. Not that there's much. You guys are. We have to talk about that, but
no. But I mean, you could tell. What's fun is he's in the East Coast now, so I'm seeing a lot of my friends from the East Coast talk about it.
Yeah, like the New York show.
It's great that they're getting the experience.
Don't rub it into the guy in the room who came out here instead of going to it. Sorry, Rob.
But
the cool thing I think a lot of us said straight after was just seeing him invigorated. I mean, it's like the music and the little nods, and they live and they put on sunglasses. That and playing Morricone, it was pretty amazing. You wrote an article about it in the end?
Oh yeah. Well, the Morricone thing, the
Morricone
thing, it really inspired me seeing him cover.
But I feel like if we can get him like jazzed on his music, I feel like we get more Carpenter movies. I get the feeling like Carpenter might go, you know what? I'm feeling energized. I want to make a movie again, because I don't want a Carpenter movie again if he doesn't want to do it, because that's the last thing I want, because that's where he's been for a long time. But if he gets jazzed about this and goes, you know what? Let's do it. Let's just make one. That would be the freaking cool.
We could hope.
And just this could be fun to wrap back to our Mike Flanagan episode. The book I read on my trip, haven't finished it yet, is Gerald's Game, because I was really curious. And I will go on record now and say I have no idea how anyone can turn that into a movie. So Flanagan, I'd love to know how, because the opening is so great, and it's got, it's a woman chained, having kind of an S&M thing with her husband, and she's chained to the bed, opening chapter, and something happens, and now she's stuck, chained to a bed for the whole book. And I'm just reading this going, and topless. And so I'm like, wow, I have no idea how you would actually, it's kind of exciting to think how he might, kind of want to talk to him about it now. But it's a cool book, and it's getting me kind of wanting to read more King again, which I hadn't for a long time. So I'll let you know how it kind of wraps up. But it's good. And real quickly, because I know, sorry, I wasn't here last week for your quick wrap up, but I just want to throw out a couple podcasts, because traveling a lot. Besides, first I want to, I already mentioned how great your interview with Mark Pavia, and I really mean it. I mean, to me, it touched me, and it got me excited about being a filmmaker in life. How that doesn't have to die, if you go away from it. But some of the things I was listening to, there's a new one, a guy called Bill Ackerman, and I think this will be up people's alley, supporting characters. And you're going to dig the idea here. He interviews people involved in film culture, but not filmmakers. And so it's like Kiera Janissi was one, because she's right. The guy who runs Projection Booth. Exhumed Films is a new one. The one I listened to is the guy who got me into Zulowski. His name's Daniel Bird, and he's the writer, like Stephen Thrower from Nightmare USA. He writes all Eyeball Compendium, and he kind of is the guy who kind of discovered and put all these articles and interviews with Zulowski and kind of got him back in. So they're really interesting about, like, basically how do we keep film culture alive, and whether you're a podcast or whether you're a cinema screening. And I found it really interesting, and I think people who are into the whole bag are going to dig that one. But I don't know if you guys talked about it last week, but Mark Maron's Carpenter and Joe Dante interview, especially the Dante one, was really strong.
The Joe Dante one I listened to.
Yeah. You didn't like it?
Yeah.
I like the Dante one.
The Dante one's okay. You know what? I got to agree with Ryan Turek, who sadly is not part of this episode, but we discussed it.
Yeah.
And Ryan's like, you know what? I've never heard a guy so uninterested in talking to two filmmakers.
I didn't feel that way with Joe. I felt that way with the Carpenter one I got.
I noticed the Carpenter one was cut short.
Here's why.
Heavily
because
edited.
John hates, this is just common knowledge. John hates having to go film by film in his filmography, where somebody's like, well, then you made Halloween. Right. And then you did the thing, and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, if you see him at conventions, he doesn't want to talk about that anymore. Yeah. And the whole purpose of him going is to talk. He was never rude about it. He was actually, he actually had a lot of
he actually said some good stuff. Yeah.
But Mark, like the last thing he wanted to talk about was his music. So it's like he's going film by film, and then very abruptly they wrap up on his music.
Yeah.
And as soon as it's over, Mark's like, "Well, there you go, John Carpenter. He talked for me as long as he wanted to talk to me."
And that's all I'm going to say.
He made it clear that that's what it was.
Well, I don't know about Mark. Like Mark, I don't listen to Maron that much.
Well, Mark's not. He's not. I mean, he's a great interview.
Yeah.
He's not a horror fan at all. And it's like, here's two great directors.
He even says that multiple times.
He says it in his intro. I don't think. I mean, he got some good stuff out of them, but I was actually really.
But I've
disappointed
seen
some.
I heard a lot of. I think there's some good stuff on Gremlins, and I think a lot of stuff I hadn't heard. Mostly not because of the interview, mostly because Joe's a good talker.
Yeah,
having done interviews with Joe Dante, I know he can keep anyone interested.
Like his stories about the Corman days were fascinating.
Yeah, he's just an interesting guy,
so.
And it was just more film culture stuff that was fun. But I did one other thing I learned that I think was really cool for me. I listened to the Projection Booth did an episode on The Beyond, and I never freaking knew that the lead actor in The Beyond was from New Zealand. The doctor is a Kiwi, and I didn't know this. And I'm someone who taught, like in New Zealand, I got to teach like film New Zealand history to students. I never freaking knew he's the lead in The Beyond, and so we watched the second half of it today because the first half. Remember when we all went? I was falling asleep in the first half, watching it, and the Blu-ray. For one, let me report back: the Blu-ray might be the best looking Blu-ray I've ever. Like where you're like, oh my god, how did they make it look? So hats off to Grindhouse. But I totally can see the accent now. Like he's obviously filtered through pretending to be American and stuff. It is kind of awesome to learn that David Warbeck, and there's also some story that he's meant to be Bond and stuff, but I didn't know much about him, and so that for me was a really fun thing to learn.
Nice.
Cool.
But so that's my update from the 3 weeks of absenteeism.
Wow.
Letting you guys down.
What did you see, Bekah?
I only watched 2 things this week. Well, one of them is 2 parts, but the first one I'm also a part of, so I definitely want to plug it. The new Garbage Pail Kids documentary, 30 Years of Garbage.
Of course you're part of that.
I know, right? But yeah, I was super psyched to be asked to be a part of it by Joe Simcoe, who knew I was just like a giant Garbage Pail Kids fan back from when I was a kid.
And who did the Killer POV logo.
Yeah, he did the Killer POV eyeball. And they came to my house and asked me all these questions, and I had so much fun with it because usually I'm like pulling out horror collectibles and things like that, but instead I still have my old Cabbage Patch Kids, and I still have all my old binders of Garbage Pail Kids. And so I got to show them and talk about it, and it was just amazing. But the whole documentary is just really good, especially because it looks at some of the controversy that happened where parents started screaming that these were horrible for their kids, and they got pulled off convenience store shelves, and parents were refusing to let their kids play with them and things like that.
Yeah, I can't think of anything like it now, like the original. Like there's throwback nostalgic toys. Because Oddballs, what were they called?
Mad Balls.
Mad Balls.
I had those
crazy
too.
I like those.
Yeah.
But they were pretty grotesque.
Yeah, and they
they're
are
actually pretty fucked up for kids.
I even talk in the documentary about how I remembered one specific where it was the kid pulling the leg. It was supposed to be a baby, like they're supposed to look like Cabbage Patch Kids, and it was the baby ripping the leg off the stork and beating him with it. And I loved that one when I was a kid because I thought it was so hilarious because it was an obvious rip on the Cabbage Patch Kids with the stork. And that, I would look at that card and just think it was hilarious. And now I'm like, man, I was fucked up.
Yeah.
What the hell was wrong with me? But yeah,
like you
it's still
needed
funny.
that to tell you that.
Yeah, I know. So that one, it was a Kickstarted documentary, but they got like all of the original creators from the Garbage Pail Kids. They got the people from Tops, and everybody involved was part of the original concept. Cool. So yeah, really good, and it is now available. I think they're putting it out this week.
Oh, cool.
And so then the other one that I watched is, and this is a harder one to explain. I watched Strange Frequency, which I had watched the first part of back on Killer POV. But I went and watched the second part, and there's a third part that will never be released. Strange Frequency was a TV show that ran on VH1, an anthology-style TV show that ran on VH1 in the early 2000s. I think it was like 2001. And the concept of it was a horror anthology show. So all of them are very horror themed, but they all also had to be rock and roll or music themed because VH1 had this crazy library of music and they were looking for a way to put it into all of these different shows. And so each week you tune in and you get like a little half an hour horror segment that is also about rock and roll. They're awesome. They were absolutely awesome. Mary Lambert directed one of them. Some decent horror directors. There's some regular faces that you'll see pop up throughout from horror actors, and just some really tight little stories there. They only ran for, I think it was just one season. And then it didn't get renewed. It didn't get picked back up. And so then they released them. They were going to do it as a DVD series. And so they released Strange Frequency 1, which was the first DVD. They released Strange Frequency 2, which is another 4 episodes, really hard to find. And then the last 4 of the series were supposed to be released as Strange Frequency 3, and it never got released. And so you can still only see like the first 8 episodes from the series. But yeah, some really good horror stories in there. I wish more people knew about it.
The name's familiar, but I don't. Nothing's emerging my brain.
The one that most people remember is there's one with Eric Roberts in it that's kind of considered to be like the main episode. It's the one that they used in all of the marketing images. But yeah, it was just a really tight little anthology series. I hope it gets a little bit more acclaim and they do something more special.
I want you to see Neon Demon.
I want to see Neon Demon.
Because it would be cool if you really liked it.
If I was
it'd be such a fun
Elric
reversal.
is the greatest movie. And I do have to say, I really liked his... the Viking one.
Yeah. No, I like Refn. I'm not a Refn hater at all. I don't hate this film at all. Actually, it's somewhere between. It is between Drive and Only God Forgives. I mean, you liked Only God Forgives more?
I liked it.
First viewing, or did you have to watch it again?
I saw it like a year after it came out. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I haven't seen Neon Demon. I know this sounds weird. It's just like Refn is one of those filmmakers that like I don't get the fanaticism about him. Yeah. Like. And I'm like,
I think a lot of it started with Drive because Drive was actually a good, solid movie.
Drive was a good movie.
Every one of his movies I see almost a year after they come out, and I always end up enjoying them.
Yeah.
But I don't understand this, like everyone's like, you have to see Neon Demon, and it makes me not want to see it. So I will see it. Probably in about a year from now.
But I would say to you, of all the films I've seen of his, that one, I don't know if that will translate very well small screen. You have a good setup.
Yeah, that's the thing.
But it really did. That was the one thing about it that's worth seeing on a theater. Yeah, it's just big. Big. It's kind of the whole thing. It's like fashion photography, shot like fashion photography. But yeah, it's if you like Only God Forgives You, you can definitely survive.
I dug it. You know.
So what did you see, Rep?
Well, I didn't really see much. The only thing I really wanted to talk about was something music themed, which I will play for you before we go into our interview. Yeah. But yeah, so we've been talking about this a lot on the website the last week or two, but there is a band/artist called Wolfie's Just Fine, which of course is a reference to Terminator 2. So right off the bat, you're like, oh, that's kind of funny. But it's been amazing. It's actually John LaJoie. Hope I said his name right. But he plays Taco on the show The League, which I'm unfamiliar with, but really talented musician. And the video, it's his second from his album. The video is called A New Beginning, and it is a true story about him, his brother, and his best friend Sebastian watching Friday the 13th 5 for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And it's the most... Elric has not seen the video.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Obviously, Bekah and I have watched it. Yeah. But it's the most... I can't even explain it, like, because technically, lyrically, it could be, it's not like a Weird Al thing, but it's, the idea of it is comical. Like falling in love with this woman that you've never seen before because she's in a horror movie and then being terrified because she got killed. Yeah. And kind of like, but I've never seen a music video that so perfectly captures exactly what it was like for us as little kids to watch these movies on VHS when we weren't supposed to. So,
cool! I'm excited to watch. I'll watch when I get home.
I'm
going to show it to you as I play the song.
Okay.
But it was co-directed. He co-directed it with a guy named Brandon Dermer, who does all his videos with him. And the album's great. I picked up the entire album, and it's just like, it's called I Remember, but then I forgot is the name of the album. It's on iTunes. But the songs, I mean, his writing is so sharp. There's one song called Todd and Janelle, and yet again Terminator 2. It's about how happy Todd and Janelle, John Connor's step parents, used to be before they adopted him, and now they're just so miserable and they can't get their relationship to work.
Funny.
And if only they can get rid of him, maybe they could be happy again, but it doesn't matter because they're going to get murdered anyway. So it's like stuff like that where you think funny. Really deeply. It's sad. And there's another one called Pigeon Lady, which is about the Home Alone 2 Pigeon Lady.
Wow.
And specific. She's singing to my friend who's probably 30 now, and how disappointed she is that she never left Central Park and she's still a pigeon lady. And I mean, it sounds so ridiculous and hilarious, but it's like the saddest thing I've ever heard in my life. And he's kind of a genius. But anyway, the beautiful thing about the Friday 5 video is it kind of went viral, and everybody that's a horror fan, I mean, they recreated even continuity errors within the footage of the scene they use. It's so spot on. And the most beautiful thing is right before we started recording, The girl that he fell in love with is Debbie Sue Voorhees.
Oh yeah, who didn't fall in love with that man?
He just posted a picture with her saying, because of the video I had, he's like, the internet's a magical place, and I went and had lunch with her today.
Wow.
Which I was like, that's amazing. It's
that's
so
great.
cool. So I'm going to show you the video, but I'm going to play for our listeners a little bit of the song, and then we're going to be back with the guys from Severin Films.
Cool.
So.
I stood frozen, desperately trying to make sense of it all. Your body lay motionless and your face was covered in blood. And then your boyfriend came back looking for you. I started shaking 'cause I knew, ooh. We tried to warn him, but he couldn't hear us through the screen. Oh, what could we do? He didn't have any time to move. His blood was dark, it was almost blue. I thought it was safe, we wanted to play. Yo, brother, we should leave now. We were led astray, the pastor would say, yo, your sin shall find you out. Oh, and as we made our way back home, I felt ashamed I never known. Oh, as we made our way back home, I felt the pain.
Okay, and welcome back to the show. We have two very special guests for us, the guys behind Severin Films, because this is their 10-year anniversary. Unbelievable. Welcome to the show, David Gregory and Carl Daft.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
And the thing is, David has been on our show before previously when we were Killer POV.
Talking about Lost Souls.
Lost Souls, because yes, the Richard Stanley documentary. Excellent job there.
Thank
But
you.
now we get to dive into this, to Severin and your history together. The one thing that we always love to talk about, because we're of that generation, is how we fell in love with film, how we got into horror movies and that kind of stuff. So, for both of you guys, what are your earliest memories of seeing something that you shouldn't have seen, but that you knew was special?
I don't know about something that I shouldn't have seen, but the first film that I was taken to the cinema to see was King Kong 1976.
I love King Kong 76.
Me too.
That was just on TV last week. Jessica Lange looked so hot in it.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Oh
and
my God.
and when I interviewed her for Frances, I made her sign a picture of herself in Kong's hand, which she wasn't overly happy about. But yeah, no, the story my mum always likes to tell is that at the end of the film, everybody else was completely bored except for me. And then when he dies, I screamed out. I was only 4 years old, but I screamed out, "He was my friend!" And everyone burst into laughter
At you!
at me. And from then on, I was just a monster fan. But we actually met when we were 8 years old in school.
Wow.
Over Kiss of the Vampire.
Kiss of the Vampire, yeah. It was on the BBC, and he was kind of a leery youth in class and just kind of shouted out, interrupting the teacher, "Did anybody see Kiss of the Vampire on the telly last night?" And I was like,
So you
"Well,
guys
I
went to
did."
school together.
Yes,
Yeah.
we
You
did.
guys
When we were
love
8.
that.
So we were about the size of this table.
Yes.
When we first met. And that's how we met. It was Kiss of the Vampire. Did anyone see Kiss of the Vampire last night? And David was the only person under the age of 9 in that room that said yes.
Yes.
Wow.
And I remember a screening years later of House on Straw Hill. And at
Oh,
the end of
man.
it, when Udo Kier died, David Gregory cried out, "Oh, he's my friend!" And nothing had changed. It was a cyclical moment for him.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
That's right. That's right.
Probably the most awkward jump cut screening we ever had was that movie because it was so rapey. I just remember everyone shifting uncomfortably for long periods of time. It was great.
Well,
And
it's
so,
a proud release for us.
so you guys have known each other for a long time, but when did both of you've always been movie fans,
Yes.
but when did you know that was going to be such a prominent part of your life, that you wanted to have something to do with movies, whether it be filmmaking or whatever?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it was since King Kong onwards, so I was already making Super 8 movies and stuff like that by the time that I met Carl. But then we became pretty passionate about it. It was the same era that VHS, or Betamax in our case, was coming in. And so we were the ones who were trying to, rent stuff, and the gorier, the better, and we would go to each other's houses and watch, quite a few of the films that we've released, actually.
Was Betamax the more prominent format in the UK?
No. But
Okay.
it was the earlier format that was cheaper than VHS, I think, was why, certainly why my parents got it, but probably yours as well. I mean, we didn't know the one. Well, you had both eventually. I never did. I was still on fucking Betamax until after the video stores had them. But yeah, so that was.
And it was always a case of both of our mums were sort of frowning on us, sort of renting all these horrible films, but both of our dads were quite liberal, and we'd go to the video store with Dad and come back with Night of the Bloody Apes and those kind of things.
Yeah.
Good old Dad.
Well, 8th grade. It's fun.
Exactly.
Is that timing-wise, that pre the video nasty outcry, or right
Just
during
before,
it?
just
Okay.
before.
So you're like
so we
golden
were
age
there.
right
We
before.
must have seen maybe 20 of the video nasties before it all became the big thing.
Because Night of the Bloody Apes was on the
Was
video
one of the
nasty.
video
That's
nasties.
right.
Yes, and so we saw, zombie creeping flesh, zombie flesh eaters, anything with zombie in it, of course, and all that stuff. And so then when it was became this huge cause célèbre in England, we were 10 years old, I suppose, and saying this is ridiculous. These films are not dangerous. Trying to explain to our parents and teachers and stuff like that we've seen these films, which obviously must have looked a bit odd.
Well, we had to both ship them out. I mean, we were both trading in video nasties back in those days as well, and when the whole scare came about, we gave them to our friends to hide in the attic.
Yes,
You were
because
totally bootlegging
Yeah.
before you even knew what it
well,
was.
it was because there was kind of an underground up and down England through magazines like The Dark Side and fanzines like Sam Hain, where people said horror movies for sale, kind of wink wink, and then everybody would give their list of what they had, because everything that we wanted was kind of illegal, certainly in its uncut form. So people up and down the country were sending through the Royal Mail these tapes, and we would go round to our local video stores, and the ones that were cool would let us have the stuff that they had in the back room that they weren't supposed to have, and sell them to us, because there's nothing they could do with them. And in fact, just a few months ago, I went back to Nottingham for a friend's wedding, and the guy from Sherwood Video still owned it, and he recognized me the second I came in. He was like, "Wow, you're still here?" I said, "No, I left 17 years ago." But and I was like, "You're still here?" He said, "Yeah, well, I'm a teacher by day." I'm like, "You're a teacher? You were selling me Last House on the Left when I was 14 years old."
Sounds like my kind of teacher.
Yeah.
So, that was nice.
Now, at that period, was there any title that was particularly hard to get? Was there a golden jewel, a crown in the jewel, or jewel in the crown, of those films? Because if you're getting
I mean, to
illegal-
get the originals, because we start collecting the original tapes as well. To get actual bootleg copies, you could pretty much get anything that had been available, because somebody had it. But, the rarer ones were things like Beast in Heat and Devil Hunter, actually, a film we put out, and Expose, aka House on Straw Hill. They were all ones that started to go for a lot of money, and now they go for ridiculous amounts of money.
Yeah, the Beast
original
and
tapes.
Heat VHS tape is it's a couple
one of the big
hundred.
ones.
No, it's more than that. It's 600 quid.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, £600. So.
Yeah, we did an article on those on the site a couple of
Oh, I
months
saw
ago
that,
where
yes.
we went through and how much we've seen them go for on eBay and things like that. And I remember that one being in there.
Yeah,
It's,
Beast and Heat, I don't think we ever even saw we never even saw an original back in the day, even on people's lists for sale. So it was always, I think they probably Snuff was another one that was pretty rare, because they only made something like 500 and brought it to a trade show. And just as the Video Nasties thing was starting, they decided to quietly withdraw it without ever releasing it. So only 500 of those were released, although I do have one of those.
Beast and Heat is just Nazi ape rape.
Yes.
Still
Nazi-
kind of the same thing.
He's not an ape. He's just has simian features.
Yeah, simian features.
Were you as disappointed as I was when you saw Snuff?
Actually,
That was awesome. What's the matter with you?
the story behind Snuff is certainly more interesting than Snuff. That's
Sure.
that's for sure. Yeah.
Wow. So how early did the filmmaking bug hit you? I mean, watching these movies, I think for a lot of us, I think what it is horror is the one genre where you start to figure it out. You see things happening like, wait a minute, I think I know how they did that. And at least for me, that stirred my interest in filmmaking. So was it kind of the same thing for you? Was it through the genre?
Yeah, definitely. And then finding out that my parents had a Super 8 camera and suddenly realizing that we could do this because video cameras weren't even prevalent at that point. Your dad had one, but we couldn't touch it. You know, it was you had to have a thing on one thing. And
we had one of those. My parents had one that you had to carry a bag
the player,
alongside
exactly.
it.
Whereas the cine camera was a better lesson because, well, first of all, you only had 3 minutes of film, but also you had to learn things like exposure and stuff like that, and editing in camera and things like that. So there was a lot of, what tools do we have in the garage that we can use to chop each other up in the garden, which was basically the Super 8 movies, which I was probably making them from 8 to 16 or something.
Wow.
And they're available on the Sledgehammer extra feature. You just shove them in there.
Yes.
Pointed off to
the early years, yeah.
So then how did you get into the distribution? I mean, what was the path to get there?
I actually, on one of those same trips while we were going around to find the video nasties from the local video stores, I happened upon a guy who had this kind of small distribution outfit in Nottingham where we were from. And it was mainly to do kind of budget films. He would buy up, stuff that they probably didn't have the rights for after the Video Recordings Act, but they were still replicating them and stuff like that. And anyway, I got talking to him, and he and I got along, and I just started having a summer job at his distribution outfit selling crap to up and down the country, sometimes delivering that crap and boxing up that crap, but also on the phones to the HMVs and stores up and down the country. So that's kind of how I learnt about buying rights and things like that. And then
Deranged was the first movie.
Deranged was well, we were going to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre, though. This is how we got started together, because we had made a deal for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but the head censor told us that it would never be released, not on his watch, so we basically cancelled the deal. And then when we heard that he'd
been kicked out,
retired,
forced retirement,
we went back to the people, and they were like, "Oh, sorry, we sold it to somebody else," and they made a fortune on it. But that's how I made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Shocking Truth. And by that point, we picked up Deranged and Hated and Vigilante, and The Child, Vigilante, and a few of the films we'd picked up for VHS got banned. So we were very upset at the censors, and then that head censor died, thankfully. And then, but after that,
I remember the first ever order. I drove all the way up to THE, they just ordered 100 pieces of Deranged. So I drove up there with a little box in the back of my car, 100 pieces of Deranged. This is not the glamour of the movie business.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how they don't realize that by banning it, it's only intensifying everyone's love who's already passionate about it. They're going to protect. How did that, without watching the documentary, which is also great on the subject, but how did it all come to change? Was it just simply certain censors dying out, or was it a political change in government, or what had to happen for that?
It was down to us, basically.
When the next censor came in, he allowed Texas Chainsaw, The Exorcist, and Straw Dogs, which were three big problems for the previous guy.
Did he justify why he was allowing them now?
He just put them out, and guess what?
The wind's blowing in different directions.
Society did not collapse. It was amazing. But then we
picked up Last House. I mean, we had the rights to Chainsaw, and so we lost them, unfortunately. And then we picked up a much more difficult movie as far as the British censors are concerned, Last House. It had just been cut for theatrical, and it was quite a lot of money, but we're just like, hey, let's do it. We've lost one major movie, let's just pick up another one and, ride with it, basically. So
we took the censors to kangaroo court, because you're allowed to appeal a decision of the censors, but it has to be, they choose the jury, basically. So it's basically children's program presenters and things like that. And you show them fucking Last House on the left. Yeah. Of course they're going to be like, this is unsuitable, but that's, we had a case.
We hired QCs and proper lawyers.
Wow, you actually did? Wow. I never knew that.
No,
and our lawyer was like, we've got this is so easy. But it was a kangaroo court, so they're like, no, and now we're going to make you cut even more than we were asking you to.
As a punishment for
boys. Yeah. But it did make them acknowledge that a lot of the films that they'd still been cutting as being obscene actually was unlawful, right? And they stopped cutting films just because they'd been on a nasty.
I mean, they basically, Robin Duvall, the head of the BBFC, lied under oath. Had it been in a proper court, then he'd be done for perjury. So
instead, he's running a church in South London now. So appropriate.
No, I mean, they had like a thing where anything that had been prosecuted under the OPA in the last 10 years, they'd make automatic cuts. And we could reel off like at least a dozen cast iron cases of this, and that's what they did with Last House. They cut it due to this rule. It has no legal basis whatsoever, and we challenged that. They lied, but the people that watched it were horrified by the film. So.
They were horrified by what they saw.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How does it compare, like, because obviously I remember Kirby Dick's documentary about the MPAA. How do you feel it compares to the MPAA system?
Well, I think it's much worse just because it's not voluntary. Right. So basically, anyone, if you make an independent film here, you could just put it out yourself. You can't do that in England. You have to get a rating. And the rating's expensive. And there's no guaranteeing that you'll even make back the money that you spent on getting the rating.
How much about is the rating?
It's probably about £1,000.
It's come down a little bit. When we first started, it was like £1,000. More or less.
But in America, the problem with indies, that makes sense. But in Hollywood, it's obvious the problem of being R-rated
but it is
or X-rated.
But it is a government body. The MPAA was born because the film industry didn't want to be seen as kind of a dirty little industry where nasty things were getting away back in the days of the Hays Code and all that. Business came out of that, so everybody was kind of self-regulating, whereas this was imposed upon distributors, and still is to this day. I mean, stuff still gets cut and banned. It's not nearly as bad as it was.
I think I read something recently worrying that it was going to switch back a bit in England. So I can't remember around which movie. It might have been Neon Demon. It might have been something really recent where they were worried.
Well, that was a Daily Mail article, though, and they every couple of years, the Daily Mail just try and complain about this filth, which when you read the text, they obviously haven't seen it, which is always the case.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Always was the case back then in the nasties. They haven't seen it, but they've heard that it's terrible and it will affect somebody else, usually the inference being somebody working class.
Right,
but they'll actually make sure that it comes off as we're saving the children.
Yeah, you've had no personal issues here with the MPAA.
No, because I've never
really
dealt with it. Oh, no, we dealt with the MPAA on the Manson family. Jesus, I had to bring it up.
By Jim Van Bieber, right? That's by Jim Van Bieber. Let's talk about that.
You said I couldn't use the C word.
Okay.
Enough said. Holy shit.
Stir the pot. Stir it.
Shit. Phone calls are coming. All right.
So when you were working with the MPAA here in the States, was it difficult? Since you were dealing with them one-on-one on a Manson family movie.
It actually wasn't that difficult, just because I knew we could release the unrated version. So it wasn't painful to make every cut. And I had to cut it down and down and down because I had to cut it 3 times and resubmit it based on their notes. So the BBFC is different because they give you very specific cuts. They can't do that here legally because they're infringing on freedom of speech or something like that.
Rights.
Yes, exactly. Whereas in England they have no such worries about that.
They can just and say you need.
They'll say on this minute it's like there's blood on breast. That is an illegal image, and that's basically.
Well, they had a thing about nunchuckers as well. So, like in Deadbeat at Dawn, we had to remove just the nunchuckers on the wall, basically. So.
I guess we could just do a side profile on Van Bieber because we're talking about a lot of his movies. Does he leave good voicemails? Because I've heard good voicemail stories about the man.
Hold on, I'm curious about the nunchucks thing.
Yes, nunchuckers.
Yeah, nunchucks. I don't even know how you fucking pronounce it, but
why are they
even Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had to cut it, even when it was linked with sausages.
Wait, why?
Yes. Because it was.
But you have guns in your movies, right?
Guns are fine. Well, this is what I'm talking about. Guns are fine, but these might be something that boys might get didn't know existed, and then all of a sudden now they know that throwing stars and nunchucks exist.
So it's smarter
they wanted to
just
erase them from existence in movies.
Okay.
Yeah. So even like The Tenant was cut because it had that scene where Isabella Gianni and Roman Polanski go and see Enter the Dragon on the screen, and it happens to be the scene where he's doing the nunchucks, so they had to cut that. Yeah. Kentucky Fried Movie in the Fistful of Yen section, they had to cut that. So like all these movies were cut just because of what was it? It was imitable weaponry or something. No, that's imitable drug use was one thing, and then dangerous weaponry. Yeah, but guns are fine. But nunchucks are right out.
Because that's one that like a lot of filmmakers won't put in now because they get weirded
Smoking was fine at the time, but I think that now they've got certain age restrictions. If there's a certain amount of it, it's stupid stuff.
TV is all against smoking. You got to kind of sneak it in there, which is unbelievable.
When you were working, was it Blue Underground that was your first gig in America? Working
Anchor
with
Bay.
Bill Lustig? Oh, Anchor Bay. With Bill Lustig there.
Bill Lustig, yes. So Bill Lustig, after I interviewed him for Texas Chainsaw: The Shocking Truth, which was the first kind of long-form featurette that I did, he was working with Anchor Bay, and they just picked up the whole Studio Canal catalogue, and he said, we've got The Wicker Man. Do you want to do a documentary about The Wicker Man? So that was the first one I did, and then came out here to edit it, and he was really happy with it. So then just kind of made me the in-house featurette guy for a while, and then we started Blue Underground. Our company was called Blue Underground in England, but then
we were the first. We were the first.
That I honestly didn't know that.
Yes,
Really,
the reason was because I wasn't working for Anchor Bay, and I was still going back and forth to England. So he made Blue Underground Inc. as a production entity, so it was separate from Anchor Bay for liability and all that kind of thing. And then when he had his divorce with Anchor Bay, I was still working very closely with him, and he said, let's just call it Blue Underground. So Blue Underground seems like a international entity, and that was that. So I worked with him for the first 6 years of Blue Underground.
Yeah.
Wow. Can we talk a little bit about that period at Anchor Bay? Because to me, that was that was kind of like a golden era, at least as a horror fan. Because obviously, we searched for all these VHS tapes, or went to conventions for bootlegs, and then all of a sudden,
and Shock.
Double bill.
Double bill.
But then the DVD market was really hitting, and I remember it being a big deal just to get Argento movies in clamshell boxes from Anchor Bay.
And a lot of that is a credit to Bill. Honestly, he really kind of jumped on it. No, he was with the Roan group or Elite first, but then when he got together with Jay Douglas at Anchor Bay, that's when they started, putting some real money towards licensing movies, and he would go to Italy and just buy up all these rights to the Argentos, the Fulcis, mainly Italian movies, some Spanish movies, the Hammer movies, and he also was the one who wanted to put, proper production values into extras as well. So, that's kind of how I was able to do a lot of the things that I wanted to do well, because he was really behind making them quality. So he, as interesting a temperament as the man has, it's usually in favor of making, an immaculate product. So
he's definitely a pioneer in the whole thing. He introduced me to Anchor Bay UK, and we had a very flourishing relationship for that same amount of time, 4 or 5 years, and we were basically producing all of their discs, and it was good times. Mm-hmm. And
they had budgets for they had serious budgets for doing the Polanski box set and the Joe Spinell story that I did for Maniac and stuff like that.
He was just milking, so I'd say it's my favorite extra again. No,
did you do that last time I was on here?
It's my favorite extra.
It is
flat out. It's my favorite extra. It's just a great story, and it's
not
presented.
An extra.
Okay, sorry. Yes, supplemental material. No, it's a great, fantastic story.
Poetry in his eyes.
All right. Well, sorry, I'd forgotten that. Or maybe
had you ever met? Did you ever get to meet Spinell before that?
No,
because it's all that post. Yeah, it's a shame.
Of that period, the Anchor Bay period, and getting all the Italian films, what were kind of the I don't want to say favorites, but what was the film that you're like, oh man, I can't believe we finally got this movie, which I'd never seen before, or I get to work on and interview these people.
Let's have a think about that. I know in the case with Severin, it was Santa Sangre, but with
doing Polanski first.
The Polanski's was amazing. Yeah. Yes, interviewing Roman Polanski was amazing.
Which films was that for?
I got to go to his house and sit on his daughter's little pull-out bed.
Oh, really?
She wasn't there.
I don't know where I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, no, seriously, you want to clarify that was to watch a cut of the featurette. So
Polanski was open to it. He was really surprisingly cool with somebody sitting on his underage daughter's bed. What a shock. Which films were in that collection?
It was Cul-de-sac, Knife in the Water, and Repulsion.
The ones that ended up being Criterion releases.
Yes, so it was a box set in England.
Oh, was it Anchor Bay UK or just okay? Yeah. Now that's interesting because I remember I had to buy a multi-regional player because while Anchor Bay US was doing cool stuff, I'd have to get the Scanners box set or the Children of the Corn box set or the Hellraiser box set from Anchor Bay UK.
Mo, the guy from Anchor Bay UK. He was pretty aggressive in licensing titles, and he had his own, he had his own operation, so he didn't have to follow what Anchor Bay US were doing. He was picking up a lot of stuff, wasn't it, at the time?
Who is this?
It was a guy called Mo Claridge who ran Anchor Bay UK, but unfortunately he died while we did Ban the Sadist Videos Part 2, and yeah, he just had a heart attack on Christmas Day, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was terrible because it was kind of the end. That was definitely the end of an era, and also coincidentally at the same time that the DVD business really kind of started to drop.
Mm-hmm. Right. What was the motivating? What led to going to Blue Underground after Anchor Bay? To paint around it, what happened with Bill and his relationship with Anchor Bay? Because for me, at least as a fan, what I remember is kind of when Stars got involved and bought and.
No, that's actually
that might have been way later.
That was later, yeah.
Okay.
Now, Bill and Anchor Bay started to have a more contentious relationship. I mean, you really have to ask him about the details, but it was something to do with the fact that they became much more of a corporate entity,
right? As
they became much bigger. And it's just one of those things where him and Jay Douglas and the original team is what made them such a big entity on DVD, mm-hmm. or certainly contributed to it. And but then of course when you got a lot more people show a lot of interest, and Bill's not somebody who likes people meddling in his business, so he just decided to start the Blue Underground label separately, and he kept the same team that he had here for Anchor Bay US here in LA, and then a couple of them went over to work with Anchor Bay, and the rest of us stayed with him.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Part of me was like thinking it just was the titles, because it's like, you're at Anchor Bay and you could we can market Argento. Like,
yes.
These are these films, but like everything that Blue Underground and Severin has done feels like niche titles, like where you really have to be.
But that's kind of how Blue Underground started. I mean, basically originally it was, Shockwaves and
the deep end of horror.
Yes, exactly. And Jess Franco films, and Emmanuel in America and Salon Kitty. And Emmanuel in America in particular was one, now that they were becoming a bigger and bigger corporation, they would never have touched Emmanuel in America. And it was actually an Anchor Bay title in the Studio Canal catalog. And all he did was showed them the Pedro the Horse scene. And they were like, all right, you can have this title. This is one of yours. And so that was what it was, really. He basically carried on, even though they had already cherry-picked all the bigger Argento titles and Fulci titles. Yeah. He carried on with, doing the sort of more obscure stuff, and, eventually kind of built it back up, where now he's again doing Fulcis and Argentos.
And God told me to.
Which is all Elric's fault.
Yes, I pressured him live on air.
Did you really?
Blu-ray.
He told me on air that it was at the bottom of his pile, and I just said,
you
it
gotta
was all
put it
because
on
of the
blue.
cover art that it didn't sell. It was a terrible cover art, and we needed to sell. And so he probably still not selling any units, and that's my fault too.
Let's assume that our listeners did it. Like the listeners were so irate. When
By God told me to.
Not on blue.
Yes. The saddest part of the whole story is that I now have it on blue, and I haven't watched his blue yet. And I'm like, it's one movie. I've got a question. To start a company, a side company with Severin, like. For me, I know it would come from like one film that I just am like, I gotta get that one film out, and no one else is doing it. Did it come from a film, or did it just come a natural evolution? Oh, we can do this on our own now. Let's go.
I had been trying to get Bill to release Gwendolyn for quite some time, and he thought the film was shite. Okay, and then
but it sold well, so
exactly.
I'm very
eventually,
happy.
And also John Cregan, who was the third partner in Severin at the time, who worked with me for Bill. He was obsessed with the Australian film Felicity. Okay, so it was basically like
that cover.
Gwendolyn and Felicity.
Gwendolyn and Felicity were our first two releases.
A bunch of randy men got together, made a production company.
But initially, it was that. In order not to, upset Bill as competitors, that's what we started out. It was mainly softcore erotica that we started with, and Gwendolyn and Felicity were both very good sellers. So we thought we were onto something, and sure enough, most of the early ones
and
did
we got all
well.
of the Black Emanuels we licensed.
Black Emanuels, we did
around the world, and Bangkok.
The first two Franco films, Macumba Sexual and Mansion of the Living Dead, which has less living dead and more naked Spanish women. Anyway, and then I think it was probably Inglourious Basterds and Bloody Moon and stuff like that. That's when we started to kind of segue into what we would do, what we're sort of better known for now, I guess.
And then you got all classy once you worked in Jodorowsky into the equation. Because that was the first time I think I heard of the company.
Me too.
It's
Santa Sangre with the
Well, we were holding out for that one for a long time. That was one we always, because Anchor Bay tried to get it for their box set, as far as I'm aware, but the rights still weren't clear. They were still somehow wrapped up with MGM or one of the studios or something like that. They eventually expired, and we've been onto this guy. Whenever it becomes available, you tell us, and he did.
I remember that one vividly because I had a German imprint of Santa Sangre on DVD, but you had to have the Regions player, which were not as easy to come by back then.
Yes.
This isn't that long ago, but yeah, they were not as available. And I remember being at Comic-Con and someone telling me while I was standing at the booth that it was getting re-released, and I was like, holy shit, it was amazing. And I was so excited when it was finally delivered to my door.
But it's also one of the few horror films. I mean, I think it's one of the best films, period.
Me too.
The last couple of decades. But it's one of the few genre films with genre trappings that Roger Ebert was very favorable about.
Yes.
And I always thought that was really surprising and kind of almost a little bit of redemption for the bastard. Because he always killed crucified so many great movies.
When would like the Manson family?
Oh, he did? Oh, well, yeah, but that's because Van Bieber left him nasty messages. He had that brush him with Gallo. It turned what was your first run-in with Jodorowsky's films? Like when were you young seeing El Topo, or?
It was when we used to go to a store called the Psychotronic store in Camden Town in London.
Is there any relation to the magazine?
No, and the guy Michael Weldon, who ran the magazine when I finally met him, he'd asked me if I'd been to the London one. I said,
he has a Psychotronic
are you guys
store
related? And he's like, no, not at all. They just took my name, but there's not really much I could do about it.
But,
but it really was
he has a Psychotronic store. Michael Weldon does. Yeah.
We had one in New York as well.
Have a Psychotronic
It's in Georgia, I think.
Yeah, somewhere down south.
Yeah, I think it's in Georgia. But but this one in London, you had to literally go down into a cave in Camden Town, and it was about as big as this table. The whole store was, and somebody there had a tape with El Topo and the Holy Mountain because it had come out on Laserdisc in Japan or something, some bootleg so it had Japanese subtitles, and it was they were pretty impressive films. And then Santa Sangre I saw in the theater when it came out.
Yeah, because it was different. For those who don't know, can you explain a little bit about the problem with it was Alan Klein and the distribution issue? Because when the internet first started, is pretty much when I became aware of looking for El Topo, and I remember this one site that would have all the images of it and images of Holy Mountain, and then there was a story. And a story about Alan Klein, and Jodorowsky's words were like, if I saw the man eating a sausage sandwich outside, I would spit on him, or it was something.
It was outside his Jewish orphanage, eating rotten
pork. Probably my favorite website memory.
Yes, exactly.
But then one day it was all fine. So
it was all fine, and eventually Jodorowsky admitted that it was actually his fault. It wasn't Alan Klein's fault. And it's on our disc in one of the extras, but basically he admitted that they were going to do the story of O after the Holy Mountain, and Klein had set up the meeting with the other investors and stuff like that, and Jodorowsky was walking along the hallway to go to the meeting and said, I will not be told what to do, I will not do the story of O, this shit, and just fucked off to the airport, left them there, and so Alan Klein was like, screw you, I am taking your
films off the
more. Well, he eventually admitted it once they made up, because
I kind of want to see Jodorowsky's story of O, though.
Yes, that would have been better than Juge Counts. That's
better than Tusk. Better than Tusk. But Alan Klein, for those who don't know, he was famed with John Lennon, right?
Yeah, he was the
producing the Beatles
manager.
So was it because did that initial relationship with Holy Mountain was because John Lennon was so impressed with El Topo that he wanted to?
That's right, and I think George Harrison was going to be the star of Holy Mountain, but he wouldn't wipe his ass on screen. And Jodorowsky said, no actor will tell me how to depict my art.
Can you even imagine
Take
George
that, Harrison
in that movie? I love his son. I mean, his son's in it, and they're always amazing.
Yes,
in his
they
films.
are. In the latest one. Fantastic. Adam.
The newest one? You mean after Dance Reality? Oh, you've seen it?
Yes, I saw it in Cannes. And the guy who plays Little Phoenix in Santa Sangre plays Jodorowsky
Is he
in this
Brontes,
film.
or?
No, that's Adam.
Adam.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then
Cool.
and then Brontes plays his father. So yeah.
So you still have a decent friendship with Jodorowsky to the.
Not
Or you
really,
didn't say-
no. He's a kind of a crotchety man. Even when we did this big, long interview for Santa Sangre, I mean, he gave us an amazing interview, and that's all we wanted, so that was it. But there was definitely no, hey, let's hang out and have dinner afterwards,
Yeah, this is one of those titles that if you haven't watched, don't even bother watching trailers, just buy it blind and trust us.
Watch it.
Because it's about as unique a film as I can really think of, because there's shades of Psycho and Lynch and so many things in it, but it's totally unique.
Yeah, it's definitely a mama's boy slasher, but it's not anything you've ever seen before.
I remember reading a story, and I don't know if you go into this in the film, that he was inspired by the story for this film by sitting in some office where he met a real-life murderer.
Mm-hmm.
What was
on
that?
the disc.
Oh, it's on the disc.
It's on the disc.
Okay, I won't.
But it is.
Buy the disc.
But funnily enough, it's interesting how Jodorowsky remembers the story about meeting Goyo Cardenas, and he knew him as a guy who'd killed 30 women.
Yeah.
And then we've got a thing, a featurette on Goyo Cardenas, an expert talking about him. He killed 3 women, and he also thinks it's very unlikely that Jodorowsky ever actually met him for some geographical reason or something like that.
Weird.
But again,
So you have an
a
interview
lot
with
of
the killer
people.
in here?
No. He's dead now.
Oh,
but
okay.
but the point of the killer is that he got redemption and then ended up being kind of a high level lawyer in Mexico City afterwards. And the whole story is about redemption after doing something because you don't remember what you did.
Oh,
And that was
okay.
kind
That
of
kind
the
of murder,
spark of the story that made it interesting to him. Because Claudio Argento just wanted another Dario Argento film, but directed by
Right. Yeah, so those who don't know, Claudio Argento, Dario's brother, produced this film.
Yes.
As well did something Almodovar had something to do with, or not? Am I wrong?
No,
Okay.
No.
Or maybe Claudio Argento later produced an Almodovar film.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think so. That you didn't release, so you don't know. You don't care enough.
I would know.
Every time
Alfonso Arau, the guy who did Like Water for Chocolate, was going to produce Sons of El Topo. I don't know if that's why. But then his son was the guy who drew the tattoos on the tattooed lady. It's all very incestuous.
And that story came back again this con, and I don't know if it was just bullshit story, but that Sons of El Topo was closer to happening again, but I don't know if you heard that.
I doubt it.
You're doing it and not telling me.
Because I think he wants to make 5 movies in this Dance of Reality series. He wants to do his whole autobiography.
But the new one's good.
New one's beautiful. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the one that came out last year?
Dance of
Dance of
Reality.
Reality, yeah.
There's no one,
Which
I
I,
haven't
also
seen it.
thought was good. But
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but I have
Yeah.
the score and the music's fantastic.
It's literally sitting on my desk at home.
Yeah,
On Blu-ray.
it's
Really?
sitting
Look it
on-
over.
It's if you like Jodorowsky,
Oh, yeah, I
you
mean-
should watch it.
Yeah.
Wow.
After I watch the extras on this.
That will take you 6 hours.
There was something I was dropping off at the Silent Movie Theater in LA, and they were showing like a matinee, and there was one guy in there, just one guy in there by himself, and he was leaving as I was dropping this thing off, and he was like, "It's beautiful." So I'm gonna trust that one guy who saw it at 2:00 on a Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean,
That
they're
it's
certainly not very commercial movies at all. But then neither was El Topo or Holy Mountain. But I think the imagery in them, they're still very much him. There's nothing that's really kind of watered him down at all.
Something we ask your competitors about. They're all competitors. Anyone out there? But no, with Scream Factory and you guys and a marketplace that is, Arrow is now in the U.S. as well. As much as you can talk about it, just whatever you feel comfortable. But we're curious, how is that market in the 10 years you're in? How much has it changed? What are the pressures now? Do you guys have to release more titles or higher end title? Like what's the
No,
pressure?
they wouldn't touch the filth that we go after.
you guys.
So we
Severance the dirt.
we operate in a very different sewer.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I guess in regards to his question, can you talk a little bit about the changes in formats over the course of the last 10 years? Because obviously you put these things out on DVD, and now Blu-ray has kind of taken over, and I've, of course, upgraded everything to Blu-ray. So, I mean, was there reluctance to jump onto the Blu-ray wagon, or like, how did the business change when it came from DVD to Blu-ray, and how did it affect you guys?
it was a slow starter, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, our first Blu-ray release was Inglorious and Hardware, weren't they? They were the first two.
Oh,
we put out, which were
Hardware,
both
But they were both
hits,
huge successes,
both big titles. I think the general thing is that VOD and on demand, that's the way it's all going, but it's nowhere near replaced what DVD was. I mean, the early days we were pretty late onto the DVD bandwagon. The peak of DVD was 2002, 2003, that sort of era. We started in 2006 on the sort of the downward trough of Blu-ray, of DVD, but there was still enough to make it definitely worthwhile. Blu-ray has replaced that to an extent, and VOD hasn't. VOD is still
Yeah,
It's a
and
tiny
we have
percentage
found
of
that
it.
people who are like fans of these kinds of movies do like a special edition still.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
you know, but it puts more kind of pressure on us to fill our discs like this. Here we have a Dr. Butcher M.D., which is out later this month.
Which I've never
which
seen.
is,
I don't think anyone here's seen
I
it
haven't
before.
seen it.
Well, it's Zombie Holocaust as well. So you've got Zombie Holocaust on one disc with all the Zombie Holocaust extras, and then Dr. Butcher M.D., which was the 42nd Street re-edit with a bunch of 42nd Street extras, and then you get your nice little vomit bag.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so...
David's demonstrating.
We'll take a picture and post it. That's great.
Yeah.
Is this one a title you saw when you guys were younger, or is this something that...
Yes, but it didn't make quite the impression that Zombie Flesh Eaters, aka Zombie, did, or The Beyond,
Right.
because this one was pretty badly cut in England, so didn't seem quite as ass-kicking.
But now you think it's something that...
Yeah,
We'll
now
get a kick
once we that was one of the ones that once we were trading in bootlegs with tapes after everything was banned, that was one that was like that and Maniac and a couple of others that we'd only seen in these seriously truncated versions, and they didn't seem to be that hardcore to us. But of course, when you see them in the uncut version, it's very different. So a lot of these films are quite ruined by censors.
So back to kind of what I was saying, who do you hate more, Arrow or Screen Factory? Just like hate, like fuck them, the little...
Oh, gosh, you.
The C word. Which one gets the C word?
Although I do like that you said
Synapse. Oh, it's Synapse. I can see from the icon.
It's definitely Synapse.
You're on Team Code Red over here. Don't piss those guys off. Jesus.
So do you actually, amongst all these people, do you see any type of competitiveness for it? Like, everyone's going after this one title, and shit.
We've had that a few
couple
times
times.
with Lustig. We've butted heads with Lustig.
Have you
Yes.
had to ever go into bidding wars for titles or anything like that?
I would
Shouting
say
matches?
Shouting matches.
Birdemic,
is like
right? Birdemic.
Yeah.
You had to bid for that, didn't you, back in the day?
No,
the first
we
one?
didn't.
You just
Nobody
gave him
else
$1
wanted
and...
Birdemic. No, we gave him a fine advance for that film.
In cash.
In cash.
In a bar.
In a bar, which he was very happy with.
That title actually did
waving
well
it
for you, right?
around.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Birdemic?
Birdemic did well for you,
Did
right?
fine. Not as well as
alright.
it should have done, but
Yes,
it's
it
fine.
did well in terms of the attention that the film
Yeah.
got, but there was a bit of a learning curve in that.
It's the only Severin title that's been on the front page of the New York Times.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
that's
true.
right.
And had a half-an-hour segment on CBS News. And been on BBC News. And been in the Times in London.
I remember seeing it on an end cap in Best Buy.
Yes.
And,
Wow.
Yeah. And
Not too many of our titles get that.
Well, even though this is, it's, it's a pretty silly movie, but tell me, because I remember it being a funny story how that film, that he was like driving a van around Sundance, and you were you guys the first people to kind
Well,
of
it was us and Evan Husney, who was then
Yeah.
working at Troma. And the
Yes.
reason we were there is they were showing Plague Town at Troma Dance.
Alright, yeah.
And a friend of ours called Bobby Hacker was there as well, who did one of the Betamax segments, one of the unfinished ones, and probably never will be. But he was the one who was obsessed with this van going up and down the street in Sundance with the piece of paper saying Birdemic on it. He'd spelt the name.
Birdemic.
Yeah, he'd spelt the name of the movie wrong on the side of his fucking
Did it have birds on the van?
and he
or
had
something?
had
birds and blood,
speakers on
and
the
it was
side of his van.
screeching, and he just thought it was a PETA protest or something like that. But he went to the screen. He was the only one of us that actually went to the screening, and which was in a bar downstairs in a bar, and where there was 5 other people, and the director actually got up and did a Q&A afterwards to these 5 people who were dumbfounded, and he just came back to the pub where we were.
No, we were at the Troma House when we were.
No, we were at the pub first. When Bobby came back, he could not stop laughing. It was almost like
I've just seen the worst fucking movie I've ever seen in my entire life.
He couldn't control himself. So the rest of it, as the night went on, just became obsessed with what he was talking about. And then it was Evan who kind of made it happen in terms of getting it to us.
Shock and terror.
Shock and
we
then we
did
had
that,
a great few months of showing it
was
around
awesome.
the country. It was really
I
fun.
recall being one of the stops. We had the This Week in Horror, my first show I did, and he comes on, and every time somebody said shock and terror, we had one of the birds fly across, squeaking across the screen, and it must have been every fucking 2
remember
minutes
that.
for like a 2-hour show. It was, and then we replicated it a year later when Larry Cohen came on, but with the Cue the Winged Serpent. So anytime he said Cue the Winged Serpent, "Rah!" But it was yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe meeting James. It was pretty amazing because he really believes he is the master of the romantic thriller. He buys into his own myth.
Nobody else has that title. Face
What
it.
is he doing now? I mean,
Well,
have you
funnily
guys been in touch
enough,
with him?
Evan from
I'm
Vice.
going to see him in a couple of weeks.
Evan from Vice, who now works at Vice, is actually doing an episode right now on Birdemic.
Wow.
Bobby Hacker is in New York. He's flown him out from here, and they're using some of the footage that was taken at the time to do a little documentary. But we do not actually know, in terms of his day-to-day life, no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
But he is talking about Birdemic 3.
He's a lower level soft mail salesman, like on the screen.
But didn't Bobby was trying to make a documentary about him, though, right? Back in the day.
Yeah, no, one day that'll happen. It's
Okay,
just,
cool.
Bobby's
Gotta
films
finish
are
that
long
Betamax
gestated.
first, Bobby.
Yes.
Very silent there.
Yeah.
Which of your titles is? If you can share this, which was the one that is the best selling or the most surprising? But both.
Well, Inglourious Basterds is definitely the best selling.
Yeah.
By far. We lucked out on that. We just right place, the right time. We licensed it, and Bob Murawski put me in touch with Tarantino, and he did the interview and said on camera that his version is going to happen, and
Wow.
to have a
was good
celebrity endorsement like that
Helps.
pretty fucking great. Basically.
Yeah.
So,
But the best one's Things, right?
Yeah, that's one thing. But Things isn't Severin. That is a
it's
completely
Intervision.
different company that has nothing to do with us, Elric.
No, it was still connected.
All right,
right?
it's Intervision.
But Intervision was what was the idea of setting up Intervision? Was it to put out some like video nasty? Not video nasties, straight to video, the shot on videos, SOVs or
Yes.
Shidio, shot on Shidio as they call them.
Yes, yes, and it was stuff that, or there were some films that we didn't have, they weren't film originated, so we knew we would have taken a lot of flack for putting out a Jess Franco film that was shot on video or something like that. So we decided to make Intervision as a sideline, and then it was actually Evan who came up with Sledgehammer and Things and The Burning Moon.
They seem fun to market. Like I remember Sledgehammer got a good market,
and it was actually a pretty smart move on his part, because they, unlike most of the films we put out, they don't have a huge amount of investment in restoration and film transfers because they shot on video, and the master that they had then is as good as it's going to get. And it's,
I saw Sledgehammer on a big screen, and man, it looked bad. Like seeing it put on a big
It
screen.
wasn't
You're like,
designed
wow.
for that.
It
That's
really
the-
isn't. That's the great thing about it. But then I
And
watched
we've got
Things at my
more.
house and fell in love.
we got
like,
more of
Things is
those.
awesome.
I had a
Things is
relationship
awesome.
with the TV that night. It was a beautiful thing.
Do you want to tell your Things story on this show since you
Let's
never
get to the
did?
Things story, Elric.
Thing story. I'm
Carl-
already forgetting
Carl hasn't heard it
forgetting
yet.
the actor's
Right.
name. Barry
Who's the lead guy?
Barry
Gillis.
Gillis.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try
Carl,
to do it quickly.
brace yourself for this.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
pretty
I'm
intense.
ready. I'm ready.
It's true.
Sorry, I apologize firstly to Killer POV listeners who probably heard this
But
many
it's
times.
great every time.
Okay, so we ran a place called Jump Cut Cafe where we did screenings and of all sorts of movies, and I have a fucking shit ton of movies at home. Like Rob, you have all sorts of movies, and usually I grab a film to test my DVD Blu-ray player and the projection system before I play the actual movie, because I don't like people to come into the space watching a part of the film you're going to show. I remember doing that once with Possession, then everyone's just like, I want to see that movie. I was just trying to test it. But so I pick a movie random as fuck off my shelf to bring in that day, and I just looked at my thing and said, oh, you know what? I'll grab Things because that'll be funny to watch for a second on my screen and see how it plays. So I grabbed Things off the shelf and I head to work. I can't remember what we were showing. I think it was, believe it or not, this might wrap around. I think it was Roy. No, it wasn't Roy Frumkes. It was an anthology.
It's another
called
anthology
not
video
High
thing.
8. Maybe it's called High 8.
Yeah, High Eight.
High Eight.
Yes.
Hi,
It's called High
that's
8,
it.
and it was one that we were being paid to screen. So it wasn't something I programmed like normal. Somebody said, "Oh, can we book the place out?" And we knew a couple of the filmmakers, and all of these were shot on video type. The idea was an homage to those kind of. So I get to work and we set it all up, and there's no one there. Like in the whole jump cut, it's just me, maybe one person behind the counter.
Let's
And
keep in mind what's happening that weekend. It's
it's
AFI, right?
AFM,
Or
yeah.
AFM.
AFM was happening. I mean, none of this mattered to me, but of course I stick in Things, and it comes up on the screen, and it's just the title, and it's just bold, and I'm like, oh yeah, Things. And I'm like making some joke to the person who works, one of our baristas, and I go, this is one of the best movies. I can't even explain why I love it, because sometimes you watch these movies, like Sledgehammer I didn't love, and somebody next to me loved Sledgehammer, I was just like, that's right, but Things had some quality, and I fucking turn around, and Barry Gillies, the star of this film, who lives in fucking Canada, is standing behind me, and he looks at me. He hasn't got a mustache anymore. He had the little fun little mustache. This
he
film
got
is
the same
how old?
jeans?
Yeah, it's probably the same jeans, and no mullet. But it was like 20 years before that film.
Yeah,
Would it be
yes, yeah,
about 20
that's
years
big,
old?
yeah.
I turn around. This is a guy who's never been here. I recognize him.
Never been LA.
I recognize. No, I didn't recognize him. I turn around, see him, and he just goes, "Is that some kind of no? What's this looking at? Is that some kind of joke?" And I was just like, what do you mean? And he goes, the movie Things. And I said, yeah, no, that's a great movie. And he goes, I know, it's my movie. And I said, what do you mean? And he goes, I'm Barry Gillies. And I was just like, what the fuck? And he goes, why are you showing it right now? And I explained, I go, how are you here? How is this even like feasible? And he goes, I'm at AFM just for the day. I didn't know anything. And I looked in the paper and saw that this movie was going to play here. And I thought I'd just come. Oh my God. And it was like you had, like, I feel like I added a year to his life.
Yeah.
I felt like the random quality of this
But you
event.
see, that doesn't surprise me because there is something holy about things.
Yeah, something holy about things.
You know,
But the story doesn't end there.
It doesn't. But before that, if you look at the photo, by the way, of Elric with this guy,
Yeah, I'm beaming then.
there's been like Wes Craven's been in Jump Cut. All these people. Elric has never been more excited by a celebrity guest at his cafe
I got there
than this guy. He was so happy.
Definitely for the people who appear in those VHS collecting documentaries, this is one of those stories. So the movie starts, and we said, who else is here from the movie? I think the movie ended, and on one of the couches, all these little seats, but on one couch there's just two people, and then we find out that the director of the other 1980s film Things is sitting next to Barry, and they had no idea who each other, and they both raised their hand and go, oh, I made Things. And they looked at each other, and they started talking, and they got on like a house on fire. And I swear to God, brains were fucking fried. I was like, it just felt like, fuck, I think I might watch Things tonight. It's been a while. Here's one. I've never seen the other one. How was the other one? Have you seen it? The other Things? Never seen the other thing. We're going to do that then.
Things double.
But it does feel like with these movies, sometimes there are special things like that happen, and I don't know. That truly was so strange. When people who listen to shows like this, oh, but you guys live in LA and everyone. Yeah, but this guy from Canada.
Yeah.
It was just so bizarre.
And just to find them in the same place at the same time on the same couch when we weren't even screening either of their movies.
Okay. We did this for Screen Factory. We tried to move some Slumber Party Massacre units because I want them to release number 2. Yeah. So I said, can we sell some? Let's sell some Things units, baby.
Okay.
Let's move some things. Let's get at least like 50 things sold.
The funny thing about Things is that at conventions, it's one that people will come up to the table and say, "Oh, dude, have you seen this fucking thing?" Yeah. You know, they're like people who have seen it are really passionate.
I think it's got the best cover of any release.
The cover art is amazing.
I would buy a poster of Barry on that. But it's also got like I think the problem is sometimes when we talk about this, we don't believe in guilty pleasures. We just believe in like what you love, and that's the thing about the movie. I think a lot of people, oh, it's so bad, it's good. No, it really isn't. It's actually funny in the way Evil Dead is funny. It's got real humor and strange Canadian like jokes to it, and it's just so offbeat that I think it wins you over. But that's just me. Anyway, thank you for reminiscing with me about Things. Do you guys think you would ever? I mean, because I know Evan moved on to obviously he's at Vice now, and didn't he help get what was the bit
He was at Draft House for a while.
But he also the Oscar film. He got the Oscar documentary for them back in the Act of Killing, right?
Yeah, I don't know if he was solely responsible for that, but he was.
Let's give him all the credit for now.
Yes, absolutely. It was all Evan.
But would you guys? Are those titles still of interest to you guys or is that just
yes?
Kind of
and we've actually got a few more coming up now, and we do have a couple of people who work for us or with us, I should say, who are definitely passionate about those kinds of films, and so there's been quite a few of those that we've actually been going through. Quite a lot of trouble to actually either untangle the rights or find elements for. The next one that we've got is a Canadian film called Phobe, Phobe, which was basically made for public access TV. And it's about a guy in a mullet, but he's fighting aliens in this case.
Wow.
And then there's several, I can't mention the others because even though we're at contract stage, maybe they've not found the elements yet or whatever, so we don't know if they're actually going to happen.
What about Cathy's Curse? Can we release Cathy's Curse? Because Brian Collins wants Cathy's Curse on Blu-ray.
We've licensed Cathy's Curse, right?
Did you hear that?
He
shot
Cathy's Curse.
the wad.
It's coming out on Blu-ray?
On Blu-ray.
Oh my God!
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
Now, guys, or just tell them
Literally one of my favorite screenings in LA history was watching Cathy's Curse for the first time.
I'm so excited because it's on like Amazon Prime, but
it's on a million. It's on YouTube.
And I can't watch it. I can't. I'm waiting for your Blu-ray.
And it does. The original movie does not look like shit. Okay, and so we
this is a Things moment.
Yeah, we tracked down. We tracked down Eddie Matalon, the director who was in Paris.
Canadian, right?
Paris.
Oh, but he's a Canadian. Oh, is it French Canadian?
I think he's French and went to Canada to make it. But I could be wrong about that. But he's definitely living in Paris now, anyway. And the producer's still in Canada, and we just signed the contract a couple of weeks ago.
That is
and
so cool.
I've already interacted with Kathy on Facebook. And
wow! So you're going to build some extras.
Yeah, of course we are.
Need to.
That's
you
what we
really
do.
should ask Brian to get in there because I've never met a better trooper award.
Such a true fan of this.
Yes.
Like a lot of us were kind of like, "Oh, you must be kidding," or doing it.
Well, again, I thought it was
he is
gonna be
actually aware of it because
Okay.
he got when I mentioned it to the guys from Shudder TV.
Yeah.
I guess the guy from Shudder TV. I've
Sam's
got to
in
tell
it.
you,
Yeah,
Sam's in it. I've got to tell
We
you.
went to Brian probably right away. Yeah, that's what he
I was like, you didn't announce this or anything, did you? And he's like, no, I just had to tell this
Is
one
Abby
guy.
out? Because the other movie that reminded me, obviously very similar, is Abby by William Girdley. Has anyone got
That one's got legal
Yeah.
problems, hasn't it? Which is
Yeah,
it's
I
kind of like the Great White movie is, and there's an injunction, I think, from the
soundtrack
studio. No, it's because it was too close to The Exorcist, I
Oh,
think.
right, okay.
But was certainly the
And
case
it really
with
was.
Great White was when Jaws 2 was coming out. They got an injunction on the film 2 weeks after it came out, and it's never been allowed since.
Yeah, we were fortunate. We got to see a 16mm print of Abby.
At Cinefamily.
Yeah, and it was.
And that was the other most. I mean, that was so much. It's so much fun.
Yeah,
and it's
it was
a really
quite something.
But it is almost shot for shot remake of us. Just changed the race of the cast.
Yes.
I mean it's pretty, and a lot more motherfuckers said.
Yeah,
Which still is a good thing.
I think that might be the problem.
Yeah, it could be.
There's a few titles I want to bring up, but in particular, I like how, at least with the Blu-ray versions of the Severin titles, you really pack these discs not just with features, but sometimes you get an extra movie in there. And one of the bizarre ones is we did a double bill one night with your copy. It was Axe. We watched Axe, but then we watched, what was the other movie?
Kidnap Co-ed.
We didn't watch them both in a row. We watched Axe, and then we watched.
You watched Bloody
Slaughterhouse.
Brothers?
Oh no, we did Axe and Slaughterhouse, the one you didn't do.
Yeah.
Because
We
I had a
because we
family
wanted
member
it.
in it. A friend's dad.
That was our
in it.
thing. But when we watched Axe,
Yeah.
and then I started reading about it, and I watched the documentary, which I thought you did a beautiful job on. But then I was blown away that it's Axe, Kidnap Co-ed, and then you did a cut that combines both movies.
Yeah, well, the director did that cut in his own effort to kind of reclaim the movies because they were stolen off him.
Yeah.
So he just thought
Stolen by
Harry Novak, the distributor.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Allegedly. And so basically he did a recut because they both starred the same guy.
Yeah.
So he just thought, if I call them Bloody Brothers, it's two twin brothers going on a killing spree on the same day.
Yeah, watch that
And he
version.
intercuts them, and he intercuts them. They really work quite well because they were both short movies anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he
Axe
was
is like 70 minutes or 60 minutes.
Axe is under 70 minutes with about 8 minutes of credits.
Yeah.
And then Kidnap Co. is more like 80, I think. But still, it was a nice little experiment. So we recut exactly because he'd cut it, I think, from 1-inch masters or something, but we sort of reconformed it to the new transfer, and so all three are on there. But yeah, we like to do that. We did that on the Sinful Dwarf as well, where we put some. The Blue Balloon was the name of the movie, which apparently, according to Vinegar Syndrome, was made by the same people who made Sinful Dwarf, but we've never been able to find out who made Sinful Dwarf. We've
Really? No one knows who made that film?
No, I mean, we have the Search for Torben on the disc
Yeah.
with all the efforts we made to try and find somebody who was related to somebody. And the only guy we got who was alive, Harry Novak had a picture of the guy he licensed it off, but he was sort of like an executive producer, not on the film.
And no one has emerged.
One guy, the guy who
music
did the
guy.
music, but he's credited with the music, but actually he just did on-set sound, which I thought was even better. I'm like, you could tell us everything, you know. He's like kind of a popular musical artist in Denmark now, just outside of Copenhagen. I'm like, right, we're coming to interview you. He sent us photos from the set, and we're like, finally, we've got the gold. And then all of a sudden, he just wrote a letter to the cameraman who was coordinating it. And I guess he'd been on the internet and had seen, I think, the thing that we made for the first disc, where this guy was sort of like playing up that the Sinful Dwarf had ruined his life. And this guy was like, this film ruined people's lives, and you guys really need to question what you're doing, the kind of stuff that you're putting out there, and I will have nothing to do with it. So that kind of like ruined our little effort.
And did it really ruin people? You don't know how it
So
ruined people.
we've been questioning our morals ever since.
Yeah. I'm questioning this podcast with you. Yes. I gotta see it. I've never seen it. I've always looked at every time you go to conventions.
It's a filthy movie.
It's awesome.
That's why we made a children's toy of Torben, and it was like, and it was and we made a little commercial, little 70s style commercial of the Torben doll, and you can squeeze his tummy, and he says, "There's lots more toys upstairs." You know,
oh wow!
It's everything that you would expect.
Okay,
it's
good.
Just about like the worst possible time.
It lives up to the billing. It doesn't disappoint.
Now, was that just because you don't know? Oh, he's got it right here. When you don't know the filmmaker, but that wasn't a problem in trying to get the rights to release it, right? You knew.
Well, no, because we bought it off Harry Novak, so who allegedly has the rights.
And if there's a title out there where the chain is difficult to kind of identify, you just still don't touch it, right? Because it's dangerous, I assume.
We do a lot. We will do. There was one title in our catalogue where we've done so much due diligence to try and find out who had it, and we just could not find it, so we just put it out.
Yeah, and then kind of if they're going to come, you'll find out.
Exactly.
We won't ask you what it is because otherwise
I'm
might
going to tell you what it is.
Yeah.
It's a secret.
Clearly, House on Straw Hill.
Nope, that was officially licensed.
Now, is there which title? I'm always curious. What's the title you think is like you think people would actually should be seeing this movie, but it hasn't sold as much because people don't know about it? Are there any I guess underrated Severin films that you feel like we should be sharing with people?
Bloody Birthday.
Because I thought the axe. I'll tell you that.
Axe and Kidnap Code is a good example. That's why we put so much effort into the disc but Stephen Thrower had kind of done the legwork for that before, as in his book Nightmare USA, and he was the one who introduced me to Frederick Friedel, and he was the one who's really kind of championing those films. But we had, as I say, we'd released it before on VHS in the 90s. So when I met Frederick Friedel, he said he had no idea it had even been out on video. He had no idea it had come out.
So he didn't continue into the film world at all?
No, and it all went very pear-shaped after the films were stolen.
Yeah.
So
I've got to watch it because
basically it gets really sad.
Yeah.
There's a scene early in the movie where they go into the as a supermarket or a gas station, and it's so memorable. It's as memorable as anything Quentin Tarantino has ever shot.
Oh yeah, with the ketchup.
It's just the scene that you remember and the kind of the dynamic, dynamic moment with the lady there. So it's I assume Tarantino's seen that. I have to guess he.
And their films just with amazing atmosphere, and they were shot by amateurs in North Carolina, and
he's in it.
We went with the directors to North Carolina to go back and talk to all the other people that had worked on it and stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun.
Are there? Sorry.
You guys are still doing some non-horror stuff. Like, I don't remember the name of the movies, but it's the whole British films that are about the apartheid in Africa. What are those? Am I remembering this correctly? I remember.
Black Emmanuel?
Oh yeah, no, we did the Wild Geese. Yeah, the Wild Geese. The Wild Geese. Yes.
Yeah,
Wild Geese. We did the Wild Geese. We did the Wild Geese, Zulu Dawn, and Ashanti, which came as a package. Which some of the Severin hardcore were not too happy about, and it was one of the things that Evan was upset about us doing, because it wasn't really fitting in with our world, but they ended up doing pretty well. So we're able to do certain other more obscure things because we do things like that.
Do you guys care if the brand is very specific, or because cinephiles, a lot of us like a lot of different types of movies. Like for me, that makes you more interesting. I get that some horror person might just be like, I don't want this from you. Do you care?
No, if it's something that we like and we want to release, we'll do it. Yeah. What is the Polanski film's not a horror film at all, is it? What? Yes. Most awkwardly titled movie in history. It's just
because it has a question
what's
mark.
What?
Yeah. What is the actual? What ones have done the best? What is the top seller?
It's of all time is Inglourious Bastards, and then Hardware.
Then Hardware, then Gwendolyn.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would not have thought for some reason more softcore style. I wouldn't think it would sell.
But Gwendolyn was actually the biggest budget film ever made in France at the time. It was made to be a mainstream movie. It's just that it's France, so you're allowed to have people running around topless and
it's encouraged.
And S&M jokery and stuff like that.
And you did Barasic, right? You did something.
We did 3 of his. We did two in an anthology. We did The Art of Love. We did Immoral Women and Private Collections. He had a story in that as well.
Did you ever try to get Beast before it finally got picked up?
That was already taken.
Really?
He actually got a fax from Borovchik.
I do have a fax from Borovchik. all is a big question mark, and that's it.
Yes, because he kept on leaving him messages saying, "We want an interview. We want an interview."
Oh, wow.
So
He also just
That's
didn't understand why.
that is worth framing, Carl. You should probably hang on to that.
Now, to keep like going 10 years is obviously in such a changing industry is impressive enough. But like going forward, do you see anything that you need to do, or do you guys kind of look ahead and go, "Oh, how is this going to change?" Obviously, VOD becomes a big part. How can you change with that?
Well, we've actually started to make a little bit of money from streaming and stuff like that, so that's helped.
Yeah.
So now we're doing kind of concurrently when a film comes out, you can get it on Amazon, if you just want to download to rent or download to own or something like that. But it's still primarily the physical disc is good for us, and we've probably, in the last 6 to 8 months, probably licensed more movies than we have in the entire 10 years. So we're definitely kind of going for it. A lot more Italian titles like Dr. Butcher M.D., Beyond the Darkness, Burial Grounds, Wild Beasts, Eaten Alive, stuff like that. But then things like Cathy's Curse, which are things that I've been looking for a while until I could finally track down.
Well, yeah, what was the issue with that? Was that a rights?
It was just finding an owner, and luckily they had in Canada at the time, if you released a film theatrically, and I think it had some sort of Canadian co-production money, you had to deposit a print with the archive. So that print has never been touched, and that's what's been used for the transfer.
I remember when I first met you. I remember the first thing it was one of the first couple times I met you. I was like, "The Mutilator." Just trust me. And I can't remember if you had seen it or not.
See, Arrow took it.
Yeah, right? Arrow took it out. And then they did such a good job, but it's like, then it's not even worth it. You watch the movie and you're like, eh. It's almost disappointing.
It's the Mutilator still.
Yeah, it's still the Mutilator.
Although getting back to Arrow and Chat Factory, we still have done extras for those other labels, and we still do.
Because that's the other thing. I mean, I think we're not really touching on as much how you're a real filmmaker, too, and you make a lot of you made. The documentary from Richard Sand, so you didn't just maybe people are thinking we're saying you distributed it. Yeah. That is your film. You're the director of the film. So
and you made Plague Town.
And I made Plague Town, yes.
Awesome.
Theatre Bazaar and a few other things. Yeah.
But I mean, how do you? What's the balance of the? You also did Theatre Bazaar. You're one of the producers of that, and you distribute that too.
We are going to be doing the new Blu-ray, but we basically sold it to. Another bunch of thieves, which was the wrong thing to do because we could have just done it ourselves. But anyway, that was a tough lesson to learn. But so now we got it back, and we're going to do it again.
What was because I know Richard Stanley did it before the documentary. Richard Stanley did one of the shorts on that. So what was your first intersection with Richard?
Well, it was Hardware was before that as well.
You guys were distributing.
So that's actually how we were in touch with him. And when we decided we wanted to find filmmakers to do this, Richard was pretty high on the list, and we didn't know if he'd given up on film completely or what, because he was so kind of far off the radar at that point. We knew he'd been making documentaries and he'd done the Dust Devil extras, so we knew he wasn't, missing or anything like that. But anyway, I went to meet him in France and said, would you like to be a part of this anthology? And he said yes. So it was pretty easy, really. And he'd actually I think the story was that he'd consulted a Ouija board the night before he met me, and the Ouija board had told him to do The Mother of Toads, and he didn't know what the context was until he met me, saying, I need a short film for the Theatre Bazaar. It's a very Stanleyan story.
It's so Hollywood.
Yeah. That's so, I mean, obviously, you made that documentary, and it became a release of yours. How important is it for you to do more original films, things that you want to do through Severin? Because I don't think it's a secret. Like, Scream Factory was telling us about their original production, basically because they were like, we just want to own one of our own. Mm-hmm. It's like there's more to be made if you own your own film. So, besides acquiring odd films that you guys love, how important is it to make original content at this point?
Yeah, we even with the extras that we did right back dating to the earlier stuff we did for Anchor Bay, we have some ownership of them, which has kind of ended up serving us quite well, because if Criterion puts out Cul-de-sac, they have to come to us to. Well, they have to, but they do, or Don't Look Now, or something like that.
We did the Don't Look Now.
Yeah, so they've.
We have a pretty big catalogue of that stuff.
Yeah, so anyway, we're continuing to do that for us and for other labels, but then after Lost Soul, it makes sense to do some more feature documentaries because we're easier to produce, they're cheaper to produce, but. Ideally, I'll be doing another narrative film at some point. But for now, I'm working on 3 different feature-length documentaries in between doing all the...
And Betamax.
And Betamax is
well, you have to assume no one here
original-
has heard of Betamax, so let's pretend no one knows what the hell
And
we're
it probably
talking
won't be called Betamax by the time it gets finished, because it'll have no relevance whatsoever, because it was basically, you know, supposed to play off VHS, but VHS is all done now, you know, they've moved on to other things.
Right.
So it'll be called something else, but that has now kind of morphed since we had the world premiere a year and a half ago into a fairly different film. I mean, it's still got 3 of the shorts in the same beginning, but now it's got 2 other shorts in the wraparound.
explain what the anthology is based around, just so people knew what it was.
It was basically Bobby Hacker and myself were watching one of the recent anthologies, because there became so many around the time that we did Theatre Bizarre. I'm not saying that we invented the anthology. I'm saying that there was a sudden burst of them around the same time. And then we watched one of them. We just thought it was so bad that we thought... I'm not going to say that. But it's,
Almost got him.
Did you already mention it?
Right.
It's a video playing format. And has a letter.
Oh, I think you were sitting behind me if that was the one. At the world premiere at South by.
No, it wasn't that one.
Oh, it wasn't that one.
Okay. It was one of his sequels.
Okay.
But anyway,
that's a good
it was. But anyway, but again, it was complacency, because we were basically like, oh, we could do so much better than that. Let's call underground filmmakers, and we'll make this in a month. We'll put it all together. Bobby's like, I'm going to call this guy. I'm going to call that guy. I'm going to just get it fucking made. This will be awesome. It'll be funny. It'll be crazy. It'll be real underground, you know. Cut to 8 months later, you're like, will it be ready? Because if so, I will program it in the festival, which was very, very nice of you, because... one
of the more stressful days of my life.
Tell me about it. It was basically, I called the people who hadn't finished their segment, and they were like, absolutely, that gives me another month, no problem. And sure enough, on the day of the film, we basically are outputting the Blu-ray, aren't we? Some of it was shot that day, the day of the screening.
Right. Somebody told me you were... I was at the theater.
Yeah.
I have this large program of short films for the Hollywood Underground Film Festival, and I get a message saying, well, regardless, Damon Packard will be there with his short. And for the feature, we hope, but there's still some shooting being done.
Yes.
And I was already at the theater on the day of the premiere.
This is totally true. We were shooting actually some of Richard Stanley's stuff. Because Richard Stanley ends up being kind of the Peter Cushing role in the film by default, because it's like, oh, there's that celebrity. He happens to be in town promoting Lost Soul. He'll do it for
Indiana
a
Jones.
lunch.
Yeah.
And he was dead into it. He was really game. So we got it done, and we ran to the theater with the Blu-ray with, minutes to spare. Or were we late? I can't even remember.
But it was good because there was plenty of beer. That was one thing I've learned over time is, bring a I mean plenty of beer, like hundreds of beer. Beer. So everyone was pretty, well lubricated.
And actually, considering it actually went down pretty well.
I think it was a very good crowd for it, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And Damon's is a total crowd pleaser to me.
Damon's is awesome, and a lot of it is awesome.
Yeah,
but
a lot
now,
of it's really fun.
we obviously didn't get time to finesse it under those circumstances. But then, unlike Theatre Bizarre, where everybody was kind of a team, and we're all rooting for each other, and to make the best film possible, and all that kind of. There was much more of a kind of like snobby sort of, well, his is definitely worse than mine, and I don't want to be, I don't want to finish mine if theirs is a part of it. I'm like, the hell, you guys, and they're like, what kind of budget is this? And that was the point. This is supposed to be sort of a no-budget thing. So it ended up being a much harder thing to do than Theatre Bizarre, and it is still going on. And we hope that it will be finished by. I think I promised somebody recently that they could have the next premiere in October.
Okay,
so we'll see.
Some other schlocky under. Maybe my next one.
Yeah, exactly.
At the end of the year, we'll do it again, and the recut. It kind of makes it even more underground. But do experiences like that kind of tip you off to it isn't just so easy to just throw together a movie?
I know that, but it's but it's also kind of like when you go into collaborating on something like an anthology. I guess I got really lucky with Theatre Bizarre because everybody was just really into it. I mean, obviously we had more of a budget on Theatre Bizarre as well, but you just don't know how one cog in that wheel can really mess something like that up. And you really need, and you learn who you like to work with for that same reason. It's the people who will kind of go through with it and get it finished and get it done.
Well, you mentioned that you guys are going to do a Blu-ray of Theatre Bizarre.
Yes.
And wasn't there at one point the thought of pulling together another few filmmakers for a sequel how does that play into? I mean, do you have the rights back just for the home video for the first one? Are you still interested in doing a follow-up?
We'd love to, but now, like I said, there's been so many anthologies at this point. I'm not sure that there's really that much room for another one.
I don't know, though, because I've got to say, of all the anthologies I've ever heard announced, I remember getting really excited about that because you were going with the Grand Guignol, all French. And you had one of my favorite filmmakers, Lucille Hadsilovich, who was Gaspar Noé's girlfriend at the time. Yes. She made Innocence, one of the best films ever.
Yes. And she is still potentially a part of the second one. And we met with the French co-producer in Cannes, and they still want to do it. And now I've got to put a reel together of all the filmmakers' stuff. And so it might still happen, but I don't think it's high on their priority list. Right. That's the problem.
Yeah.
They tried pre-selling it once.
Yeah,
because we had a great roster of filmmakers. A couple who have dropped out, but we've got a couple more in. So I think it would be good. Yeah. Udo's still up for reprising his role as kind of the puppet master.
Why not? You got to get him in there. So, are there any of the other titles you were able to announce that might have been announced that we can still let people know?
Well, the stuff that we showed at our 10th anniversary on Saturday is all stuff that isn't released yet. So, Beyond the Darkness, I've already mentioned. Drive-In Massacre. Yeah. We've just done a transfer from the negative, which was in the vaults of Dystropix, and then Bag Boy Loverboy is a new film, which we don't do many new films, and we want to try some more.
Was that conscious? Do they just not sell as well? Because I know Scream Factory, I think that didn't sell as well for them usually. But
it's harder to make people aware of what they are.
Actually, Scream Factory, if I remember correctly, said that those were selling well because they could get the newer films into Walmart and places like that.
Oh, maybe now.
This film will definitely not. Forget it. There's a reason we got Bag Boy Loverboy. It's because nobody else would dare touch this filthy little film. But it is great.
But you were actively looking for new films, or just
no? I'd seen it actually while I was editing it. While I was editing Lost Soul in Montreal, Doug Buck showed it to me at his house because he'd seen it at Fantasia, and sure enough, it is a tight 80-minute movie that's just funny and disgusting, and it really fits the Severin brand, put it that way. And it played pretty well on Saturday. The filmmakers were there; they were really excited, and I think in that case we've got to try and get more screenings so that more people start talking about it, because it's not like a Dr. Butcher M.D., which people already know. Right. And they can already talk about it and their memories of seeing it and all that kind of stuff.
You got to make up a myth about it, like the Sinful Dwarf.
But it'll be interesting to also see how well it does digitally, because all our digital aggregators tell us how much better new films do than old films. So, we'll see who will take it.
Maybe of a balance of the two.
We'll see.
What about now? I know we had Spectre Vision on at one point, and they were talking about how they kind of almost have an open door for scripts or do you guys accept submissions of films people have made, or is it more you'd have to stumble upon it?
Yeah, I don't know. We get sent a lot of scripts all the time. We haven't really got a script reading department. Yeah. And
what about finished films though? Like
finished films, absolutely.
You look at anything.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and we do get sent quite a lot of finished films, and it's not, and again, even if the film's, pretty good, that doesn't necessarily mean it's suitable for us, because of the amount of work that would have to go into making people aware of the film. Right. And people will be they may as well just release it themselves. You know what I mean? It helps that it comes from Severin, of course, because we already have a certain amount of ins and that sort of thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean thousands of people are automatically going to buy it.
How important is the ground game for you guys? Because I always think it's cool that anytime we've gone to a convention or any even local convention, I've seen you're always there personally. I've seen you at almost every one of them, and you're selling the films in person, making that connection with fans. So what is the ground game for distribution? Because I don't know if Scream Factory would need to do that. I don't know if they do.
Yeah, I think it helps us. I mean, I think the events we had at the weekend, just talking to people and putting a face to who Severin is helpful, and and we're as passionate about these movies as they are, so that really helps. And going to the Texas Frightmares and things like that, I very much enjoy talking to people about, and that's sometimes how we learn about films that we may not have heard of as well. It's not just a one-way street. They're like, you've got to find this one. I'm like, never heard of that movie. That's amazing.
Yeah, there's always one guy's got all those unmarked discs that are burns of something that you can't get some other way.
Yes.
What's the one I got? Bloodbeat, the Wisconsin samurai Christmas horror film. That's how I got that one.
I got Grim Prairie Tales at the last con.
That's one of the ones that's not on on DVD. It was on your list, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was on one of the lists I put out, and then I was like, okay, this guy has.
Oh yeah, we might have one of those ones from your list, by the way. But I'm not going to tell you which one.
Off air, he will. Off air. Well, everyone, I want you to sell as many things as you can.
Yes,
They're going to tell me if you don't.
If we reach a certain amount of things sales within the next week, I'll tell you.
Okay, I get a things too.
Get cranky, people. Buy things, for Christ's sake.
And then write to Barry Gillies and tell him that you did it for us.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Yeah,
Our
we
pleasure.
really appreciate it, and happy
us.
10th anniversary. It's pretty amazing. Pretty landmark time to be. And, I mean, what one title? Shoot off one title from their filmography that you think, you already said Things.
The one I'm most excited to watch, I've owned it since the very beginning, since I first met you, and I haven't watched it, is Blood Moon.
Oh, yeah.
Blood E-Moon.
Oh, yeah, Blood E-Moon, yeah.
Blood
Carl and I saw Bloody Moon the first time when we were 10 years old, and my mum was actually in the house at that point, so we had to pretend to be playing chess. While the TV was on the background, but it was also the same day we first watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so it was a pretty special day.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that's
But the one to watch out for the rest of the year is The Killing of America. We're going to do that
that's
theatrically.
the one that I have the most memory of, and I forgot you guys put that out because I grew up in New Zealand. That was something.
Well, this will be the first US
First ever
release.
US.
Oh, wow.
And there's also we also found, because we got the
I
negative.
don't think it's very timely.
No, well, this is the worrying thing
You
about
mean that
it.
it's already killed? I think it's too late.
The funny thing is that the Japanese negative is 20 minutes longer than any version that's been out.
Wow.
And so we're going to put both versions on, because the Japanese version is not Leonard Schrader's preferred cut, because the Japanese wanted to put a bunch of nice America stuff in it as well, to show that they weren't doing an anti-US propaganda piece. And Leonard Schrader was, nah, fuck that. It's all about the dark side. You know?
Wow.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen it, it is a very intense. Make sure you have a happy place mapped out afterwards.
But definitely watch The Sinful Dwarf afterwards. You'll be fine.
But I'll tell you, it's no more disturbing than CNN. I swear, man. You know, just watching local news can be even more grim than this documentary. But it does put it all in context, you know, which I think is a great film.
Wow.
My answer is very simple, because you guys distributed what would easily be one of my top 10 movies of all time, Psychomania. I
Love that movie.
absolutely love that movie so much. I saw it when I was a kid, and it's still like my husband and I bonded over that movie when we were first dating, because it's such it's an amazing horror film, it's an amazing biker film, and yet it's got these hilarious moments, like when he's buried upright in the grave.
Yes, and
with
they're
his head
singing Riding
sticking out.
Free.
Yeah. So yeah, there's just so much to love about that film, and it's still like, even we were talking about it right before you came in. My son has to get one of those baby helmets, and we were talking about painting the Psychomania skeleton on the baby helmet, because why not?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great.
That's pretty cool. I would have gone with a BMX Bandit, Nicole Kidman thing, which is also a Severin title.
So we do have PG fare.
Yeah, you do
here.
have some PG. She's really good in that movie. I like that movie. It's a cute movie.
Wow. I'd recommend the Axon Kidnap Co-Ed, just because the whole package, I mean, the movies, the multiple movies, the documentary about the making of it, and finding all the... I mean, there's like, you guys are digging, looking for the elements in the documentary that's on the disc. So there's just such great stuff on that, so...
I'm
filming it illicitly, because we were told not to film.
Ah, there we go.
No. It's coming out. And if you happen to know who directed The Sinful Dwarf,
Let us know.
they will give you a free copy of the film if you tell them. And if it's correct.
Who did it?
And if he's still alive, and if you know him.
Yeah. But it has to be proven for the free copy of the disc. Okay.
Wow.
Well, here's to another 10 years, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you
absolutely.
very much.
Thanks, guys.